Hi, everyone. Welcome to October's edition of Morning Bytes. We have amazing guests. And as always, this is our chance to dive into the world of cyber news, privacy news, cyber insurance, whatever's on our mind. And we have two awesome guests here with us today. So you're here at Morning Bytes with Violet, Stu, and Jason. And our guests are Andy Runyon and Alyssa Doroff. Excited to have them here, excited to see how the debate goes and how everything works. And this is just a reminder that we'd love to hear from you. We actually can see the comments rolling in. So if you want to tell us where you're listening from, or if you want to debate with us, come to talk. And that's a good reminder that everything on here is the opinions of ourselves and not that of the companies that we represent. My favorite disclaimer. This is 30 minutes, so we're going to go rapid fire and we're going to jump in. So I'm curious. Well, the top of mind is what I wanted to text Jason about this morning, which is Klopp really back?
Yes. all signs point to yes. It's interesting because for those who haven't heard, there has been over the last couple of days reports popping up that executives were receiving emails saying that, hey, we're Klopp. We have broken into your specific Oracle product and we've stolen your information. Now, for anyone who has been in the DFIR space or in cyber insurance space over the last couple of years, this is going to sound very familiar with Klopp, where we have some sort of managed file transfer solution that houses data. We saw it with Move It. We saw it with Go Anywhere. So this has all the fingerprints of Klopp on it, where like they're finding some sort of vulnerability, they're scanning for it, and then stealing data and then starting to extort. I think what's interesting here is that Oracle has come out and said, hey, this is actually the vulnerability, or we believe it's the vulnerability that we had patched back in July. And so we might just have a situation here, no idea on timelines, but Klopp probably went in, scanned the internet, started stealing data, got everything ready, and then started to extort people. And so I think we're still probably in the early innings of this, where we're going to see that Klopp is just basically manually going through and trying to extort people. And so there's probably going to be a little bit of a tail on this, and we'll see kind of how it shakes out. But yeah, I think Klopp is back, and
well, that's something we don't like to hear in insurance, that there's going to be a long tail. That's not a fun projection.
Let me caveat that. Tail in terms of claims, severity probably still low if we've seen anything like it was before, right? It's, data theft most likely, we'll see, probably just data theft. And so, Klopp, while they make a lot of noise with this, I think it's still a relatively low amount of damage. It's really just going to come down to people who are willing to pay, or and what data was potentially stored in there.
I actually pulled up on Cyberscoop. They have an example of the emails that are sent to executives. So right now, that manual extortion is sending emails to high-powered executives to try to say, we have your data, so pay us. And I wanted to read the email because I think it's hilarious and we can poke fun at it. It says, dearest executive, we are Klopp team. If you haven't heard about us, you can Google us on the internet. We have recently breached your Oracle e-business suite application and copied a lot of documents. All the private files and information are now held on our systems. But don't worry, you can always save your data for payment. We do not seek political power or care about any business. So your only option to protect your business reputation is to discuss conditions and pay claimed sum. In case you refuse, you will lose all above mentioned data. Some of it will be sold to the black actors. I don't know where that's coming from. And the rest will be published on our blog and shared. And it says, we always fulfill our promises and obligations. Signed, Klopp. There's more, but I just stopped there.
The one part I did love about their letter too was that they were going to offer advice. So it's like the classic, hey, we've hacked you and we're extorting you, but don't worry, we'll give you some advice after if you pay.
Trust us.
We're not interested in destroying your business. We just want to take the money and you will not hear from us again.
At least
even though Klopp resurgence is every couple of years on the internet.
Yeah, Peter, that's my favorite part. You can Google us on the internet. I'm not sure if that's lost in translation or a direct dig at the average age of a CEO.
It would have been better if they gave a link for "Let me Google that for you." That would have completed it.
Well, it does raise the larger issue of vulnerability management.
Right.
And I think that the thing that Jason suggested and Violet was afraid of is something that we see a lot. It's when there is a sort of vulnerability that's announced and the company does do the good faith efforts to issue a patch. The companies that use the product actually have to download the patch. They have to run the updates, they have to do the monthly maintenance or what have you. And so one of the things that we always try to talk to our clients about is that what is your plan to manage vulnerabilities? These things not might happen, they always happen. And so that tail that you describe is something that I think we can work on, as collectively to shorten, if with additional education and just understanding basic vulnerability management in cyber.
So I like the plug, but I also want to reach back into Jason saying we don't know the timeline. It could be that even before, before Oracle even issued a patch, Klopp could have been inside and grabbed everything and no one had a chance. We actually won't know that for a long time. And I think that's also the benefit of hindsight we see in these cases is that, oh yeah, you can patch, but sometimes it still is a problem, even if there is a patch available.
And that's why with Klopp, like the historical examples, they were 0 days, right? And so we don't know if they bought that 0 day or if they found that out themselves, right? But they were the ones that initiated it. Now,
wait, you can buy 0 days? How
yeah.
much?
Yeah, I'm selling a couple if you need some. Just hit me up afterwards. But this is like the timing on this is a little bit more weird, right? Like if it was available in July, did they really stay hidden for this long? And we know other ransomware groups will take old vulnerabilities and scan for it. But yeah, it is. Who knows, right? So it's a little bit of an odd thing. And these types of systems are really, really hard to monitor for as well because nobody really has any visibility into them. So from a proactive standpoint, you definitely want to patch. But outside of that, don't keep sensitive data inside these systems if you don't need them, right? Like if it's internet facing, assume something bad is going to happen. Don't keep your sensitive customer information. Have some retention policies on it if the platform supports it. And we'll say two-factor authentication on it, right? But in these cases, it's a vulnerability. Typically, your authentication is going to matter at that point.
We're hogging the mic, so I want to bring in Andy, who's on the broker side and wonderfully wearing a Cubs hat to celebrate win.
On to the NLDS, yes, ma'am.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I love this conversation because it speaks directly to Alyssa and I were talking offline before we got on today. She's got a background with larger companies, Fortune 100, Fortune 50. I've got a background, 7-year background with small to medium-sized businesses, right? And it speaks to the maturity and change in cyber underwriting and what we've seen over the last 5 years. If you go back pre-COVID, nobody was asking a small to medium-sized business, do you patch? How often? Nobody was telling them, hey, there's this 0 day out there, and if you don't fix it, then we're going to discontinue your coverage. None of that was happening, right? So what we've seen, on our side at the SMB level, as more small businesses have adopted, right, and we went through the hellish years of COVID and those poor loss ratios where some carriers were losing, a lot of money, guy. We saw loss ratios at 110, 120%, for individual carriers. We've come out of that now to where even if you are a $20 million retailer or a $40 million manufacturer, your cyber insurer is going to ask and potentially hold your claim in the balance around, do you patch? How often do you patch, right? What's your strategy? Who's in control? Who's in charge of that? So you're starting to see, because of events like this and because of groups like Klopp, a maturation in cyber underwriting that, to be honest, I'm not saying the bad guys have done a good thing, but it was much needed, right?
So what about you, Alyssa? What is on your mind this week? And you can comment on the story we're talking about or totally switch gears with us.
Yeah, no, there's a few things actually. It's interesting. Towards the latter part of last year, I think what we started to see with keeping with the SMBs and not the global 50, global Fortune 50 type companies, but we did start to see some of it fascinated me, repeat ransomware attempts. And you'd think, oh, they're coming after me once for 5,000 and they're going to give it. And then to come back again. And it's almost like, I don't want to say how stupid can you be, but the cybersecurity immaturity posture of that company just has to be at such a low level. But I was having this conversation internally with some of my, my IR colleagues and kind of saying, are you seeing this? And they were saying, believe it or not, it's definitely not as frequently as we'd seen it towards the latter part of last year, but we are still seeing it. But instead of, yes, it's the same company, they're targeting different geographical regions. So while they might be targeting part of that company in the US, we're seeing then, okay, part of them are going to be targeted somewhere in Europe. And he did say that, this is something that we are certainly still seeing. Also, we get like weekly reports in terms of threat intel and stats. And I thought it was really interesting that what we've seen is 580. So far, we've seen 586 organizations impacted by 44 different ransomware gangs. And of those, some of the industry classes that were hit the heaviest were number 1, manufacturing, number 2, professional services, and then beyond that, finance and insurance. So interestingly enough, obviously those that are hit for, manufacturing different reasons, supply chain disruption and so on, but also, you're seeing the professional services, which might not be as sophisticated, but also the fact that finance and insurance, which are typically the most sophisticated, are also being hit at the top of the list. And, I think that's, that's interesting to see that that's where those numbers are coming in. Something else that, we've been talking about a lot, and obviously it's been all over the news, has just been the increasing attack on, supply chain, but code, targeting repositories and GitHub, for example, and, sneaking malicious code into libraries and, companies rely on. So it's a compromise package that lets attackers move around. They're not looking for PII. The goal is to collect wages and salary. And we saw this, I think, with the, back earlier this year with the attack on, what happened with the North Korea IT farm, and how, it was those individuals that got in there, posing as employees, moving around with Zoom, and then able to access, the code, and then where that goes from there, and how it's, it's like a poison ingredient. And, once, if a library is tampered with, it's thousands of companies now. So, it's not just an individual organization, but I think the downstream effect and really just kind of gets into not catastrophic loss, but really the widespread impact of one event. And, companies, not only need to protect, their own code, but also third-party pieces that they, that third-party vendors they work with, and, requiring, those basic controls that we say, vet your vendors, make sure you develop individual autonomous dependency checks. You can do all that, but they're still bypassing MFA. And clearly, as, we've seen, they're still accessing the information, and there's still the supply chain risk. So it's kind of all over the place.
I love your perspective, though, because you're bringing in your experience from claims carrier side, you're bringing in from the broker side. I mean, I can tell by how you're talking that, you're on the front lines now in instant response. But it's really cool because you're looking at this in such a way. I feel like you're putting your claims hat on to interpret the technical threat update. But Andy, I'll bring you in too, because we actually had a direct question come in from the comments.
Love this question, by the way. It's a major hot topic right now. And Alyssa, you've got a background in claims, so feel free to chime in or interrupt or correct or anything. So loss ratios are down, right? But it's less around claims denials. I try my best when we talk on this.
That denials. Sorry.
Yeah, denials. The southern. Yeah, sorry guys. Arkansas in the chat.
Arkansas and Texas. We're going to turn you.
Andy, to interrupt you just for the audience's sake, would you just explain what a loss ratio is?
Sure. Yeah,
that's a good call.
100%. No, that's great. Right. Don't assume anything. So loss ratio is percentage of premium paid in versus the amount of money paid out in claims. Right. So if I said I had 120% loss ratio, that means I took in, for every dollar of premium I took in as an insurance company, I paid out $1.20 in claims. Ideally, for an insurance company to be profitable, they want those loss ratios to lie between 30 and 50%, right? You've got other overhead costs, right? You've got investors to pay back, things like that, right? So when we're running at 100 plus, that's really not good. It's how folks go and solve it. To that question directly, we've got a lot of really good studies right now. And I don't like naming carriers individually. We've got folks with carriers on the call, right? But there was a particular carrier, very, very popular, billions of dollars of premium placed worldwide, that reported at the end of 2024 that they paid 98% of their claims. claims aren't getting denied, right? What's happening is we are getting better and better as an industry at underwriting what types of businesses we want to take on in the first place, right? And then what's also happening down ballot for some of these carriers that write poor forms, when we see claims denied or folks not paid out, made whole. This was actually, Violet, plays right into what I was going to discuss today. We've got this new NetD report, net diligence, major conference. Everybody talks about it this time of year. It starts next week. My boss will be there. Part of the NetD report in 2025 asked 10,000 folks that submitted cyber insurance claim, was your claim accepted? And how much of that claim was paid out? And the average response was 69%, right? So I asked people, if you bought a $100,000 car and totaled it the next day and was only paid back 69,000, wouldn't you be pissed? Like, would you not be mad? And where that comes from, it's not the carrier going, hey, we're not going to pay this. It's from the insured and potentially their broker not understanding their risk potential, right? That's the issue. Loss quantification. Oh, we've gone out and we've bought $1 million of GL and we got $1 million of work comp, so we're going to buy $1 million of cyber. No, you're $100,000 regional or $100 million regional orthopedic with PHI line everywhere and exposed vulnerabilities, right? Like, on average, you're probably going to lose 7 to 10 million. You need more insurance, right? And so I mean,
some loss quantification nerds that are just going to start blowing up the comments.
Yeah, but that's, I guess to kind of shut it down and pass it back out to the group, right? On our side, we're not seeing just blatant denials, right? We're seeing stingier underwriting on the front end, right? And what we're seeing more is insurance paying out, but that loss quantification being the struggle to where folks are massively underinsured.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the denial. I have such an issue with that, having been in the industry for almost 20 years at this point, and significantly working experience on the claim side, on the underwriting side, on the broker side. What I struggle with so much is when you have a conversation with somebody who doesn't know that much about cyber insurance specifically or the industry, and they say, I don't know if it's worth it. My claim's just going to get denied. Andy's point, 69%, that's still pretty good. And the one thing about cyber insurance that is such a basic concept, but for others that are, working in professional services or other types of insurance policies, I think the thing that's such a key distinguishing factor is it doesn't require negligence. It doesn't require, there's an event, you discovered it. I think the way the policies function is so different than so many other product lines that I think there's so much less of an opportunity for a claim to be denied. And in my personal experience, I'd say that the denial rate is so low. And even getting back to the underwriting and how far along we've come in the underwriting, even saying a patch management and requiring patch management, if on some random night the patch management or a much more sophisticated update didn't go through, and then the carrier says, well, you said on the application that you did this on a regular basis, and then all of a sudden one night this didn't happen. From a commercially reasonable perspective, how often is that claim going to be denied? And if that claim was denied, how often is that carrier going to get repeat renewals? There's so many factors that come into play, and I think as advanced as the underwriting has become, there's still going to be that one-off, and it's how often is that claim going to be denied? That's a coverage issue, but it really, I think it comes down to really a commercially viable decision from the insurer and from the broker.
Yeah, this is something where
I'm really loving the comments this time.
I do. I want to give Jason and Stu time to respond before we dive back in. I feel like the insurance folks are hogging the mic right now.
Sorry.
No, it's like this whole claim thing. I always get super angry when people bring this up because it's just the most ridiculous thing, and it's usually an emotional response for people who have gone through it. Like I have lived through this far too many times where in a response effort, people overcompensate for what has to get done. And like this is aside from the like, hey, like, do we have the right coverage or anything like that? It's like I always equate it back to auto insurance. Like if you are driving a Subaru and you get into an accident, you are not going to try to request a Ferrari after that accident. Like any reasonable person would understand what that is. And so what I see though is there's a lot of fear and uncertainty when you go through one of these incidents, and it's a terrible situation, but especially on the recovery side, like you do not have to burn everything to the ground to get back up and running. And that's where it's just like, a lot of what I've seen personally is you want to try to go above and beyond to make sure this never happens to you again. And some of those things, like, it's not reasonable for you to do. And so insurance shouldn't have to cover that. And I'm not in the insurance, like, in the industry directly anymore. So I feel like I can say this a little bit more directly. Right. But like, that's where, like, we do have to step back in these response efforts and say, hey, we can get you to where you were before and put this behind us without having to buy a Ferrari. Right. And so, like, that's where, like, I think people just get kind of confused there on, like, what actually is getting, can you get reimbursed for during these events?
Yeah.
Or the Jaguar, right?
Easy.
Alyssa, how many threat actors did you say you reported there in your stats?
586 organizations, 44 different ransomware gangs.
Is that real? Anybody have any opinions if that's real?
That lines up with stats.
I would like us to make a list where we try to name all of them.
I have that. I'm happy to send it out. I can share.
I just think, is it like the same humans rebranding themselves different ways, or is it really so many separate organizations?
Yeah, it's separate organizations. I mean, yeah.
I know what your number. I just meant in general. Color me a little dubious.
It's ransomware as a service, right? So, like, these ransomware groups, like, they're going to have tons of affiliates, and so, yeah, I mean, those are in line with all the numbers that I used to track, and it's only going up too, which is never a fun story.
Well, speaking of fun stories, I found an interesting one that I could offer to the group for comment. Earlier this summer, a BBC correspondent named Joe Tidy was contacted via Signal by someone claiming to be an affiliate, something Jason just mentioned, of the Medusa ransomware gang. And they offered this reporter a cut of any extortion that would be paid if the reporter would give to Medusa his credentials for his business systems. Interestingly, as I would have expected this, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but if most journalists that I've met, reporters I met, they'll chase anything for a story. That's way more important than a payday. So I mean, the guy immediately went to his editors and was like, "Hey, check out this Signal message I just got. I think there's a big story here." And so he lured them in a little bit. They tried to do some sort of MFA bomb sort of attack to sort of get around his snooping around. And ultimately, they did not pay. They did not have a deal, and they stopped communications. But it was a really interesting story, I thought, because number one, it does raise this issue of credential management. This is something that I think every organization wrestles with, whether it's using password managers or just having good policies to have strong credentials and sort of phishing resistant type of policies. It's whether you're a small company or a large company, it's just this story, I think, shines a big magnifying glass on that. Also, what Jason was just talking about as far as the affiliate model of ransomware gangs, I just want to emphasize, also includes access brokers, malicious access brokers. These are folks whose only job it is to sell or broker unauthorized access, so stolen creds. So keep out for that. And then also, of course, I think it touched upon the social engineering issue where they bribed them. They said, we'll give you a cut of this extortion and they actually even went so far as to offer him a down payment. They were going to pay him like £50,000 or something for, just as a show of good faith that they were legit. So it just is a good story, I think, to demonstrate the creativity of some of these threat actors, and also some of these are low cost cybersecurity tickets. If having strong credential management, having a workforce that you can trust and that's educated on these types of threats, on social engineering, et cetera. This is low cost stuff, folks. And so that's why I feel like this was a great story to bring up in front of you all.
Well, I have a good way to segue to the end. We're going to announce who's going to be on our next week's show. But I also think since we're all going to be at Net Diligence, I think everyone here, I'd love to start off with Alyssa on what do you think is going to be the most talked about subject matter next week? What, story, concept, what do you think is going to be the buzzword?
That's a good one. Thanks.
I put you on the spot. Sorry. If someone else wants to take it and jump in,
I'll jump on that one.
Yeah,
Two words. Soft market.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
Yes, I was going to say.
You don't think everyone's going to be Stu Paninsky talking about Funny Fridays?
Did I freeze funnies? On that? No, I think the big buzz around that.
I was joking. I'm joking. We got you.
I'll throw one out there that may not be as popular, but I think, we're seeing this more and more, and it's third-party business interruption, right? Dependent business interruption. When the question was in the chat, is 30 to 50%, is that achievable, right? When you look at, I think we've got a pretty good idea of how to prevent ransomware from a cybersecurity standpoint of base underwriting, right? We've got a better idea now. AI is making it harder on how to stop cybercrime, right? Quantifying and preventing third-party downtime, right? When you look at things like CDK Global and stuff like that, it's really, really tough. So like insurers that don't include dependent business interruption are falling behind and getting replaced by their competitors that do, right? So it's more of a popular topic, and third-party, claims are needed to be covered more now. But when you do take that on, right, you're taking on a risk that's very hard to quantify and very hard to prevent, right? So I think that third-party independent business interruption is something, if it's not talked about, it should be.
Yeah, I'm always just looking forward to hearing from the claims folks as to, exactly what they're seeing that I'm not hearing about or not seeing from the front lines. That's always the panel that I, find the most interesting. And then, of course, we do a lot of work with crypto, which is, interesting class in and of itself, just because so many carriers don't write it, but always interesting to hear kind of, what's going on in that with respect to the decentralized finance and kind of where we can see that going and the hackers angle there. So I'll just throw that out there.
I'm with you on claims, though, and I think we're going to have a lot of really relevant examples because I've been warned multiple times this Breach Friday that, we're going to see this Oracle stuff unravel this weekend and over the week. I don't know if anyone else is preparing for that, but that could also be a very interesting lead into next week, depending on how busy it is.
Yeah.
Hopefully
and
not.
Last thing,
right?
Very quickly, we've already kind of hit on underwriting on the front end. We're seeing a major shift towards active underwriting, and I'm interested to see, from the old days of like, here are these 5 questions, check yes or no, to here's this agent behind your firewall that watches what you're doing, and potentially could mature into something that adjusts rates or denies coverage or whatever, because we're actively underwriting your risk. Those type things that are happening in insurance world are extremely interesting to me.
Do you think customers are ready for that?
It's happening fast.
No, they're not at all. It's not, not at all, right? Like, if you want to, that is super big brother to the average buyer, right? They don't even want MFA on their personal devices. The people in construction don't even want MFA. They want to be able to log into their company email and Facebook on the same iPad, right? Like, of course they don't want something sitting behind the firewall and monitoring what they're doing. But the insurers, right, understand that working off a PDF and checking yes or no has not worked out that great, right? So there's got to be some type of happy medium there.
Well, Jason, why don't you take the last bit, your prediction, and then close us out with next month's
I gotta
guest.
say, AI. You can't have predictions for this year without AI. So I'm taking the easy way out.
It's like saying Jesus in church on Sunday, right? Like it's never wrong,
That was a good one. I like that one. All right, who's joining us next month? Do you see it?
It's Adriana Garcia and Devin Ackerman.
Yay, excited for November. These things go fast, way too fast. And we're so happy to have you guys on here. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your Breach Friday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.